Commander Zethkar of the Vraxian Imperial Navy stood before the holographic display, his four eyes studying the tactical readout with growing unease. The blue-scaled alien's mandibles clicked nervously as he reviewed the intelligence reports flooding in from across the galaxy. Every major military power was reporting the same thing. Human forces were moving. The conference room aboard the flagship Dominion's Edge buzzed with tension as representatives from 12 different alien species gathered for an emergency session. The Galactic Military Coalition had been formed 3 centuries ago to maintain peace between the various spacefaring civilizations. But today's meeting felt different. Today they were discussing Earth. The humans have deployed their Special Forces units to 7 different sectors simultaneously, reported General Thiss, her reptilian features twisted in concern. Intelligence suggests they're preparing for something significant. Admiral Korvek, a massive insectoid creature with razor-sharp claws, slammed his appendage against the table. Impossible. No single species has the logistical capability to coordinate operations across such vast distances. Their technology is primitive compared to ours. Zethkar remained silent, remembering the classified briefings he had received about human military capabilities. The other species still believed humans were the same primitive beings they had first encountered 50 years ago, when Earth joined the galactic community. They were wrong. Dangerously wrong. The humans had earned their place in the galaxy through a series of conflicts that had shocked the established powers. What started as small skirmishes over trade routes had escalated into full-scale battles that revealed something terrifying about human nature. They fought differently than anyone else. You're all missing the point, interjected Captain Veltari, her crystalline form shimmering with agitation. It's not about their numbers or their technology. It's about what they do to our soldiers' minds. The room fell silent. Everyone had heard the stories, though few believed them. Tales of alien soldiers refusing to fight after encountering human special forces. Entire battalions surrendering without firing a shot. Veteran warriors developing what human medics called combat stress reactions after brief engagements with human units. Propaganda, dismissed Admiral Korvek. Psychological warfare designed to make us fear shadows. Zethkar finally spoke, his voice carrying the weight of experience. I've seen the medical reports. Soldiers from 6 different species, all exhibiting the same symptoms after encounters with human special forces. Memory fragmentation, severe anxiety responses, and complete tactical paralysis when faced with similar scenarios. The holographic display shifted, showing footage from the recent conflict on Zerion Prime. The recording was grainy, captured by a fleeing Theronian scout ship. It showed a small human team, no more than 8 individuals, moving through what should have been an impenetrable fortress complex. They moved like liquid shadow, appearing and disappearing with an efficiency that defied conventional military doctrine. The Theronians had a full garrison defending that facility. Zethkar continued. 1,500 elite soldiers, the best their species had to offer. The humans neutralized the entire complex in 47 minutes. When our forces arrived to investigate, we found something unprecedented. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle over the assembled commanders. Every single Theronian soldier was alive, unconscious, restrained, and completely unharmed. But when they regained consciousness, none of them could explain what had happened. They spoke of humans who moved like ghosts, who seemed to know their thoughts before they had them. General Thiss leaned forward, her scales rippling with agitation. That's impossible. No species has developed such advanced combat capabilities without corresponding technological signatures. Our sensors would detect any advanced weaponry or equipment. That's just it, Zethkar replied, manipulating the holographic controls to zoom in on the human team. Look at their equipment. Standard kinetic weapons, basic armor systems, conventional communication devices. Nothing that shouldn't exist according to their declared technology level. The image focused on one human in particular, a female with short dark hair and eyes that seemed to scan everything around her with mechanical precision. Even in the poor quality recording, there was something unsettling about the way she moved, as if she was calculating variables invisible to everyone else. Admiral Korvek's compound eyes studied the footage intently. If their equipment is standard, then how do they achieve such results? What makes human special forces different from any other elite military unit in the galaxy? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Each commander had their theories, but none wanted to voice them. The implications were too disturbing to consider openly. Captain Veltari's crystalline form flickered as she accessed her species' military databases. I've been analyzing combat reports from the past 30 years. Human Special Forces units have an operational success rate of 97%. No other military organization in recorded galactic history has achieved anything close to those numbers. Operational success is one thing, growled Admiral Korvek. But the psychological impact on our forces is something else entirely. I've received reports of veteran soldiers refusing deployment to any sector where human special forces might be present. These are warriors who have faced down nightmare creatures from the void dimensions without flinching. Sethkar nodded grimly. He had seen it himself during the border conflicts. Vraxian shock troopers, genetically engineered for aggression and enhanced with cybernetic implants, had broken ranks and fled when faced with a single human special forces team. The shame of that retreat still burned in the collective memory of his species. There are rumors, General Theiss said quietly, that the humans select their special forces candidates using criteria we don't understand. Some say they're chosen not for their physical capabilities but for something else, something in their minds. The holographic display continued to show the human team moving through the Xerian facility. They communicated without apparent verbal signals, coordinated complex maneuvers with minimal visible direction, and seemed to anticipate enemy movements with uncanny accuracy. Whatever their selection process, Sethkar concluded, the results speak for themselves. Human special forces represent a paradigm shift in military capability. They've weaponized aspects of warfare that the rest of us never considered relevant. As the meeting continued, none of the assembled commanders could shake the feeling that they were discussing something beyond their comprehension. The humans had introduced variables into galactic warfare that challenged everything they thought they knew about combat, strategy, and the nature of conflict itself. The recording ended, leaving the room in darkness except for the soft glow of the holographic projectors. In that darkness, each commander contemplated the same terrifying question. If human special forces could achieve such results with primitive technology, what would happen when humanity's true capabilities were finally revealed? Lieutenant Sarah Chen crouched in the shadow of a massive alien structure, her breathing controlled and silent despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The Caltharian research facility stretched before her team like a metallic maze, its bioluminescent panels casting eerie patterns across the night landscape of Kepler 442b. Through her tactical visor, she could see the heat signatures of her 7 teammates positioned around the perimeter. Each member of Ghost Team had spent years training for missions exactly like this one, but tonight felt different. Tonight they weren't just infiltrating an enemy facility. They were demonstrating why alien military forces across the galaxy had begun to fear human special forces. Phantom Lead, this is Control, crackled the voice in her earpiece. Satellite imagery confirms 137 hostiles inside the facility. Caltharian Elite Guard, armed with plasma weaponry and protected by personal energy shields. Sarah acknowledged the transmission with a subtle hand signal that her team's AI coordinator translated and relayed to the others. The Caltharians were known throughout the galaxy as one of the most formidable warrior species. Standing nearly 3 meters tall with exoskeletons that could deflect most conventional weapons, they had never lost a defensive engagement in over 2 centuries of recorded conflicts, until tonight. Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez, the team's demolitions expert, ghosted up beside her. His movements were so fluid that even the facility's advanced motion sensors failed to detect his approach. Charges are set on the power grid, Lieutenant. We can black out their defensive systems on your mark. Sarah nodded, her mind already 3 steps ahead in the tactical sequence. Human special forces didn't rely on superior firepower or advanced technology to achieve their objectives. They relied on something far more dangerous: the ability to think faster, adapt quicker, and exploit weaknesses that other species never even recognized existed. Remember the mission parameters, she whispered into her comm. These Caltharians are holding human civilians hostage. We extract our people and neutralize the threat without creating an interstellar incident. That means non-lethal solutions only. Private Jackson Kim, barely 22 years old but already a veteran of 6 classified operations, checked his equipment one final time. His loadout consisted of weapons that would seem primitive to most galactic civilizations: electromagnetic pulse grenades, synthetic paralytic agents, and precision projectile weapons that fired non-lethal rounds designed to penetrate Caltharian exoskeletons without causing permanent damage. What made human special forces truly terrifying wasn't their equipment, it was their methodology. "Execute," Sarah commanded. The facility's power grid died instantly as Rodriguez's charges detonated with surgical precision. Emergency lighting flickered on, bathing the complex in a red glow that would have provided excellent visibility for most species. Unfortunately for the Caltharians, human eyes had evolved to function optimally in exactly these conditions. Sarah's team moved like a single organism, each member following predetermined paths that had been calculated to exploit the facility's architectural weaknesses. They had studied this building for weeks, analyzing everything from air circulation patterns to the psychological profiles of individual guards. Inside the facility, Caltharian Commander Vexthal received the first reports of intrusion with typical warrior confidence. His species had repelled attacks from the Vraxian Empire, held their own against Theronian shock troops, and never retreated from any battlefield. A small team of humans couldn't possibly present a significant threat. "Secure all access points," he ordered, his voice resonating through the facility's communication system. "Deploy hunter-killer teams to sweep each sector. These mammals think they can match the might of Caltharian warriors." What Commander Vexthal didn't understand was that human special forces had never intended to match alien warriors in direct combat. They had developed something far more effective: the ability to make their enemies defeat themselves. Sarah's team infiltrated the facility using a combination of techniques that seemed impossible to alien military doctrine. They moved through ventilation systems that should have been too small for their species, exploited electromagnetic blind spots in the security grid, and used the Caltharians' own defensive protocols against them. When the first guard patrol encountered evidence of human presence, they reacted exactly as Sarah's team had predicted. Caltharian military doctrine emphasized overwhelming force and direct confrontation. The guards called for reinforcements and began a systematic sweep of the area where they had detected intruders. This was exactly what Sarah wanted them to do as Caltharian forces converged on decoy signals and false traces. Ghost Team was already 3 levels deeper in the facility, moving toward their primary objective. They encountered their first live guards near the detention center where the human civilians were being held. Private Kim raised his weapon, but Sarah stopped him with a gesture. Instead of engaging, she activated a small device that began broadcasting subsonic frequencies calibrated specifically for Caltharian physiology. The sounds were inaudible to human ears but caused disorientation and mild nausea in the alien guards. Within minutes, the guards were calling for medical assistance, convinced they were suffering from some kind of equipment malfunction or environmental hazard. They abandoned their posts to seek treatment, never realizing they had been neutralized by a weapon they couldn't even perceive. "Phantom lead to all teams," Sarah whispered as they reached the detention level. "Remember, we're not trying to prove we're stronger or faster than they are. We're proving we're smarter." The hostage extraction proceeded with mechanical precision. Each human civilian was equipped with a personal stealth field generator, technology that the Caltharians had dismissed as impossible with human-level science. The truth was that human engineers had simply approached the problem from an angle that alien scientists had never considered. As Ghost Team prepared to exfiltrate with the rescued civilians, Commander Vexthal finally understood what was happening to his forces. His communications center reported impossible readings, human signatures appearing and disappearing throughout the facility, guards falling unconscious or becoming disoriented without any visible cause, and security systems failing in patterns that suggested intimate knowledge of Caltharian technology. "How many of them are there?" he demanded, his exoskeleton clicking with agitation. "Unknown, Commander," replied his tactical officer. "Our sensors detect between 5 and 50 human signatures depending on the scanning frequency. It's as if they're manipulating our own detection systems." The truth was simpler and more terrifying than the Caltharians could comprehend. Sarah's team wasn't manipulating alien technology. They were exploiting the fundamental assumptions that alien engineers made when designing their systems. Human special forces had spent decades studying how other species thought, how they approached problems, and how they built their defenses. Then they had learned to think differently. As Ghost Team reached the extraction point, Sarah took one last look at the facility's layout on her tactical display. In 37 minutes, they had neutralized over 100 elite alien warriors, rescued 14 human civilians, and gathered enough intelligence to prevent similar incidents for the next decade. And they had done it all without killing a single enemy soldier. Control, this is Phantom Lead, she reported as their stealth transport lifted off from the planet's surface. Mission accomplished. All civilians recovered, 0 casualties on either side. Back in the facility, Commander Vex Thule stared at the tactical readouts in stunned silence. His forces were intact, his facility was undamaged, but somehow the humans had achieved complete tactical victory. For the first time in his military career, he understood why alien soldiers throughout the galaxy were beginning to fear the name of human special forces. They didn't fight like warriors, they fought like something else entirely. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the briefing room aboard the human cruiser Defiant, watching as holographic displays showed the gathering storm clouds of what might become the largest military conflict in galactic history. Intelligence reports flooded in from across 7 sectors, all telling the same story. The Hegemony Alliance was mobilizing for war against Earth. The alliance consisted of 4 major alien civilizations who had finally decided that human expansion needed to be stopped permanently. Their combined fleets numbered in the thousands, their ground forces in the millions, and their technology represented the accumulated military knowledge of species that had been fighting wars for millennia before humans had even discovered fire. The odds are not in our favor, admitted General Harrison, the weathered commander of Human Special Operations Command. The hegemony has overwhelming numerical superiority, better ships, and more advanced weaponry. By every conventional military analysis, we should be preparing for defeat. Elena studied the tactical projections with the same calm focus that had carried her through 18 previous missions behind enemy lines. Around her, the other team leaders of the Special Forces community maintained similar composure, though she knew each of them was calculating the same impossible variables. "What's our objective, sir?" asked Major Santos, commander of Reaper Team. General Harrison manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on a massive space station positioned at the edge of hegemony territory. "The Alliance has established a command and control center here, on Station Nexus 7. It's the nerve center for their entire military operation. Every fleet movement, every strategic decision, every communication passes through this facility." The station was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, bristling with defensive weapons that could vaporize entire battleships. It housed over 10,000 military personnel from 4 different species, protected by energy shields that had never been breached in combat. Intelligence suggests that if we can neutralize their command structure, the Alliance fleets will lose coordination, the general continued. 4 different species, 4 different military doctrines, 4 different command hierarchies. Without centralized control, they'll start fighting each other as much as they fight us. Elena felt a familiar tingle of anticipation. This was the kind of mission that human special forces had been created for. Impossible objectives that required unconventional solutions. "What's the insertion method, sir?" "That's the problem," General Harrison admitted. "There is no conventional insertion method. The station is located in deep space, protected by patrol fleets and equipped with sensors that can detect approaching ships from light years away. Every military analyst in the galaxy would say that infiltrating Nexus 7 is simply impossible." Major Chen, leader of Shadow Team, leaned forward with interest. "When has the impossible ever stopped us before?" The general smiled grimly. "Exactly. Which is why I'm authorizing Operation Phantom Protocol. We're going to do something that no military force in galactic history has ever attempted." The holographic display shifted, showing technical specifications that made several team leaders whistle in amazement. The plan was audacious beyond belief, relying on technologies that pushed the boundaries of human engineering and tactics that violated every principle of conventional warfare. "We're going to hide a special forces team inside a diplomatic convoy," the general explained. "The hegemony has agreed to receive human ambassadors for final surrender negotiations. They're expecting our delegation to arrive with appropriate ceremony and diplomatic protocol." Elena began to understand the brilliance of the plan. They'll be scanning for weapons and military personnel, but not for specific individuals hidden within a legitimate diplomatic mission. "Precisely. The convoy will consist of 3 ships, a primary diplomatic vessel, a security escort, and a cultural exchange ship carrying human artifacts and cultural representatives. Hidden within that third ship will be Alpha Team, equipped with everything you need to infiltrate and neutralize Nexus 7. Captain Rodriguez of Alpha Team studied the technical specifications with growing excitement. Sir, this plan requires us to survive undetected for 72 hours inside an enemy facility while surrounded by 10,000 hostile aliens. The margin for error is essentially zero, which is why we're not sending just Alpha Team, the general replied. Elena, your Ghost Team will be integrated into the diplomatic security detail. Major Santos, Reaper Team will be disguised as cultural specialists aboard the exchange vessel. Major Chen, Shadow Team will be hidden within the primary diplomatic ship as communications technicians. The scope of the operation was staggering. 4 separate Special Forces teams, operating independently but in coordination, with each team responsible for a specific aspect of the mission. It was the largest single deployment of human special forces in galactic history. Elena felt the familiar calm that settled over her before every major operation. Around the room, she could see the same transformation occurring in her colleagues. These were individuals who had been selected not just for their physical capabilities or their tactical knowledge, but for their ability to function effectively under pressure. That would break most minds. The hegemony expects humans to behave according to their understanding of our psychology, General Harrison continued. They expect us to surrender when faced with overwhelming odds, to negotiate when cornered, to follow predictable patterns of behavior. They don't understand that human special forces operate according to different principles entirely. The briefing continued for 6 hours, covering every aspect of the operation, from insertion protocols to extraction contingencies. Each team would have specific objectives within the overall mission, but all 4 teams would need to coordinate their actions with split-second timing. Elena's Ghost Team would be responsible for neutralizing the station's internal security systems, creating the electronic blind spots that the other teams would need to move undetected. Reaper Team would handle the physical infiltration of the command center, using their expertise in close-quarters combat to secure the critical control nodes. Shadow Team would establish and maintain communications between all units while gathering intelligence on enemy force dispositions. Alpha Team would plant the charges that would cripple the station's command capabilities without destroying the facility entirely. The psychological impact of this operation cannot be overstated, the general emphasized as the briefing concluded. The hegemony believes that centralized command and overwhelming force are the keys to military victory. When we prove that a small team of humans can penetrate their most secure facility and neutralize their most important strategic asset, it will shatter their confidence in their own superiority. Elena understood the implications perfectly. This wasn't just a military mission. It was a demonstration of human capabilities that would resonate throughout the galaxy. Every alien military commander would be forced to reconsider their assumptions about human warfare, human intelligence, and human determination. One final point, General Harrison added. The hegemony has issued statements claiming that human special forces are nothing more than propaganda, that our reputation is built on exaggerated stories and psychological warfare. They believe that when faced with real opposition from superior alien forces, humans will prove to be just another primitive species. The room fell silent as the full weight of the challenge became clear. This operation would either validate everything that human special forces represented, or it would expose them as the frauds that the hegemony claimed they were. Elena felt a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. In 18 missions behind enemy lines, she had never encountered a challenge that human ingenuity and determination couldn't overcome. She had learned to think like her enemies, to anticipate their reactions and to exploit weaknesses they didn't even know they possessed. "When do we deploy?" she asked. 72 hours, the general replied. The diplomatic convoy departs for hegemony territory on Tuesday. By the end of the week, we'll either have prevented the largest war in galactic history, or we'll have started it under circumstances of our own choosing. As the teams began filing out of the briefing room, Elena caught Major Chen's eye. They had worked together on 3 previous operations, and she could read the excitement in his expression. This was the kind of mission that Special Forces personnel lived for: impossible odds, maximum stakes, and the chance to prove that human capabilities extended far beyond what their enemies could imagine. outside the viewports of the cruiser. Stars gleamed against the darkness of space. Somewhere among those stars, the Hegemony Alliance was preparing for what they believed would be a simple war of extermination against a primitive human species. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Station Nexus 7 hummed with activity as the Hegemony Alliance prepared for what they believed would be humanity's final surrender. Admiral Kexthorn of the Vraxian fleet stood before the massive observation deck, watching human diplomatic vessels approach through the void of space. His 4 eyes tracked the 3 ships with predatory satisfaction. "Such a pathetic display," he commented to his aide, a young Caltharian officer whose exoskeleton gleamed with ceremonial polish. 3 small vessels carrying the representatives of a species that dared to challenge the combined might of 4 galactic civilizations. The diplomatic convoy moved with appropriate ceremony toward the docking bays of Nexus 7. The lead vessel, Harmony, carried the official human ambassadors who would formally negotiate the terms of Earth's surrender. The second ship, Guardian, contained the security detail that galactic law required for such meetings. The third vessel, Cultural Exchange, supposedly housed human artists, historians, and cultural specialists who would demonstrate humanity's worthiness to exist as a client species under hegemony rule. What Admiral Kexthorn didn't know was that the human ships contained the most dangerous military force ever assembled. In galactic history, aboard the Guardian, Elena disguised herself as a communications technician, her special forces training hidden beneath layers of carefully constructed false identity. Her equipment had been modified to look like standard diplomatic gear, but each device contained capabilities that would have terrified the station's security forces if they had understood what they were looking at. On the Cultural Exchange, Captain Rodriguez moved among genuine human civilians, his Alpha team disguised as technical support staff for the cultural exhibits. Their weapons were hidden inside musical instruments, their explosives disguised as art supplies, and their tactical gear integrated into display cases that supposedly contained human historical artifacts. The docking procedures took 3 hours, during which time the station security forces conducted the most thorough scans in hegemony history. They found exactly what they expected to find: diplomatic personnel, cultural specialists, and security guards carrying standard protective equipment appropriate for their roles. They didn't find 4 teams of human special forces personnel who had spent months training to think like alien security officers, to anticipate alien scanning procedures, and to exploit weaknesses in alien detection systems that the aliens themselves didn't know existed. "Welcome to Station Nexus 7, announced Commander Yithral, the station security chief, as the human delegation disembarked. "Your accommodations have been prepared according to galactic diplomatic protocols. The surrender ceremony will commence in 24 hours. Elena moved through the station's corridors with the measured pace of a bored technician, her sensors mapping every detail of the facility's layout, while her communications equipment established encrypted links with the other teams. To any observer, she appeared to be conducting routine equipment checks and system diagnostics. In reality, she was identifying the critical nodes of the station's defensive network, locating the command pathways that connected different sections of the facility, and downloading tactical information that would allow her teams to move through Nexus 7 like ghosts. The station was enormous, a testament to the engineering capabilities of 4 advanced civilizations working in cooperation. Its corridors stretched for kilometers in every direction. Its command centers were protected by multiple layers of security, and its personnel represented the finest military minds in hegemony space. Unfortunately for the hegemony, size and sophistication were exactly the kind of advantages that human special forces had learned to turn against their enemies. Major Santos, disguised as a cultural historian aboard the Cultural Exchange, began his infiltration by requesting a tour of the station's historical archives. His cover identity included academic credentials that made such a request entirely reasonable, and his apparent fascination with alien military history provided perfect justification for visiting sensitive areas of the facility. What the Caltharian archivist didn't realize was that Santos was memorizing the locations of critical infrastructure systems, identifying backup command centers, and mapping the routes that his team would need to reach their primary objectives. "Your species has a fascinating approach to military engineering," he commented to his guide. a young Theronian officer who was eager to demonstrate her knowledge. The integration of 4 different technological paradigms into a single cohesive system must have required unprecedented cooperation. The officer preened under the attention, explaining in detail how Vraxian shield technology had been combined with Caltharian weapon systems, Theronian communications protocols, and Zeridian sensor networks. Every word provided Santos with critical intelligence about the station's vulnerabilities and the psychological blind spots of its defenders. Meanwhile, Major Chen's shadow team had been assigned to monitor human communications during the diplomatic proceedings. Their official role was to ensure that all human personnel remained in contact with Earth during the negotiations, but their real purpose was to establish the electronic warfare capabilities that would be crucial to the mission's success. Chen himself worked from a communications center deep within the station, surrounded by alien technicians who believed he was simply maintaining routine contact with human diplomatic authorities. In reality, he was installing backdoor access points into the station's computer networks, identifying the frequencies and protocols used by hegemony military communications, and preparing the digital weapons that would cripple Nexus 7's command capabilities. Your communication systems are remarkably sophisticated, he observed to the Zeridian technician working beside him. The quantum encryption protocols alone must represent decades of research. The alien swelled with pride, launching into a detailed explanation of the security measures that protected hegemony military communications. Chen listened with apparent fascination, while his hidden recording equipment captured every detail of the encryption keys, communication protocols, and network architectures that would allow his team to take control of the station's information systems. As the first day of diplomatic activities concluded, all 4 human teams had established their initial positions within the station. To the hegemony personnel, they appeared to be exactly what they claimed to be: diplomats, security guards, and cultural specialists going about their assigned duties with professional competence. In reality, they had already begun the most complex infiltration operation in human military history. Elena's ghost team had identified 17 critical vulnerabilities in the station's security network, established secure communication channels between all 4 teams, and mapped the movement patterns of key personnel throughout the facility. Captain Rodriguez's Alpha team had positioned their equipment within striking distance of the primary command center, identified the locations of backup control systems, and established contingency routes for rapid movement through the station service corridors. Major Santos's Reaper team had gained access to restricted areas of the facility under the guise of cultural research, planted monitoring devices in strategic locations, and identified the personal schedules and psychological profiles of senior hegemony commanders. Major Chen's shadow team had penetrated the station's computer networks, established the capability to disrupt enemy communications, and prepared the digital weapons that would isolate Nexus 7 from the hegemony fleet. Admiral Kexthorn retired to his quarters that evening with complete confidence in the security of his facility. Nexus 7 represented the pinnacle of hegemony military engineering, protected by the finest warriors of 4 different species and equipped with defensive systems that had never been breached. He had no idea that human special forces had already established complete tactical superiority within his station, and that the final phase of Operation Phantom Protocol would commence in exactly 18 hours. As Elena settled into her assigned quarters, she reviewed the intelligence gathered by all 4 teams during their first day of infiltration. The mission was proceeding exactly as planned, with each team meeting their objectives while maintaining perfect operational security. Tomorrow, the Hegemony Alliance would learn why alien soldiers throughout the galaxy had begun to tremble at the name of human special forces. They would discover that humans didn't just fight differently, they thought differently, planned differently, and achieved objectives that other species considered impossible. The surrender ceremony was scheduled to begin at 1400 hours station time. By 1430 hours, the largest military command center in hegemony space would be under complete human control, and 4 of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations would be forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew about warfare, strategy, and the true capabilities of the human species. The surrender ceremony began exactly as Admiral Kexthorn had planned. The main amphitheater of Station Nexus 7 had been configured to demonstrate the overwhelming superiority of the Hegemony Alliance. with representatives from 4 species arranged in a display of unified power that should have crushed any remaining human resistance. Human Ambassador Sarah Mitchell stood at the center of the amphitheater, flanked by her diplomatic staff and security detail, facing the assembled might of 4 galactic civilizations. To every observer, this appeared to be the final act of humanity's brief and futile attempt to challenge the established order of the galaxy. None of them realized that the most dangerous military operation in human history was already in motion. Elena's ghost team had spent the previous night infiltrating the deepest levels of the station's infrastructure, using maintenance shafts that alien engineers had assumed were too small for human access. They had positioned themselves at the critical junction points of Nexus 7's power and communication systems. Elena herself crouched in a service tunnel directly beneath the primary command center. Her equipment interfaced with the station's central processing unit through connections that appeared on no alien schematic. Every system aboard Nexus 7 was now vulnerable to human manipulation. Though the aliens remained completely unaware of their compromised security, Captain Rodriguez's Alpha team had taken positions throughout the command levels of the station, disguised as maintenance personnel conducting routine inspections. Their weapons and explosives were hidden within standard technical equipment, and their movements followed maintenance schedules that they had carefully researched and memorized. Rodriguez himself was positioned less than 50 meters from Admiral Kexthorne's personal command center, ostensibly repairing a faulty environmental control unit. His equipment case contained enough firepower to neutralize the entire hegemony command staff, but his orders were clear: disable, don't destroy. The psychological impact of the operation depended on demonstrating human capability without creating unnecessary casualties. Major Santos's Reaper team had integrated themselves into the station's security rotation, their false credentials and alien-manufactured uniforms allowing them to move freely through restricted areas. Their detailed study of hegemony security protocols meant that they could anticipate and counter any defensive response before it could organize. Santos monitored the surrender ceremony from the station's primary security center, surrounded by alien personnel who trusted him to help maintain order during the diplomatic proceedings. His team controlled the visual surveillance network, the internal communications system, and the automated defensive protocols that protected the station's most sensitive areas. Major Chen's Shadow team had achieved something that alien military engineers would have considered impossible: complete penetration of the hegemony's quantum-encrypted communication network. From their position in the communications center, they could monitor every message transmitted between Nexus 7 and the hegemony fleet, alter the content of strategic communications, and isolate the station from outside support whenever the mission required. Chen watched his displays with quiet satisfaction as encrypted messages flowed between the station and the assembled fleets. The hegemony commanders were confident that their communications were absolutely secure, protected by encryption algorithms that would require thousands of years to break using conventional methods. They didn't understand that human cryptanalysts had approached the problem from an entirely different direction, exploiting weaknesses in the mathematical foundations of the encryption rather than attempting to overcome its computational complexity. As Ambassador Mitchell began her prepared remarks about humanity's willingness to accept hegemony terms, Elena received the final status reports from all 4 teams. Every objective had been achieved, every system had been compromised, and every contingency had been prepared. All teams. "This is Ghost Leader," she whispered into her communicator. "Operation Phantom Protocol is now active. Commence final phase on my mark." Admiral Kexthorne listened to the human ambassador with smug satisfaction. Her words confirmed everything he had believed about human psychology. When faced with overwhelming odds, they would eventually submit to superior force. The ceremony was proceeding exactly as he had anticipated. "The human species acknowledges the military superiority of the Hegemony Alliance," Ambassador Mitchell continued, her voice carrying throughout the amphitheater. "We understand that resistance would be futile against your combined forces." What the Admiral didn't know was that Ambassador Mitchell's words contained coded signals that triggered the final phase of the operation. Human Special Forces had developed a communication system that allowed complex tactical coordination through apparently innocent diplomatic language. Elena's team received their activation signal and began the systematic shutdown of Nexus 7's defensive systems. Power fluctuations appeared to be routine maintenance issues. Communication disruptions seemed like minor technical glitches, and security system failures looked like ordinary equipment malfunctions. The aliens manning the station's control centers noticed the anomalies but attributed them to the stress of hosting such an important diplomatic event. Their own overconfidence had blinded them to the possibility that these minor problems were actually the first signs of total system compromise. Captain Rodriguez's Alpha team moved with synchronized precision toward their primary objectives. Their years of training had taught them to exploit the psychological blind spots that made alien personnel predictable. The tendency to ignore maintenance workers, the assumption that security protocols were infallible, and the belief that humans lacked the sophistication to threaten advanced alien technology. Rodriguez reached the command center's primary access point just as Elena's team completed their penetration of the security network. The blast doors that should have protected the facility's most sensitive areas opened for him, like they were welcoming an old friend. Major Santos's Reaper team began their takeover of the station's internal security systems. Surveillance cameras throughout Nexus 7 displayed exactly what the aliens expected to see, while the reality of human special forces moving through restricted areas remained invisible to enemy monitors. Santos himself assumed direct control of the automated defense systems that protected the command center. Weapons that should have targeted any unauthorized intruder now recognized human special forces personnel as friendly contacts with complete access. Authorization. Major Chen's Shadow Team initiated the final phase of their electronic warfare operation. Communication links between Nexus 7 and the Hegemony fleet were subtly altered to create the illusion that everything was proceeding normally. While the station's command capabilities were systematically disabled, Chen intercepted and modified status reports from the station to the fleet, ensuring that the Hegemony admirals remained unaware that their primary command center was being neutralized by a force they had dismissed as primitive and ineffective. The entire operation took place while Ambassador Mitchell continued her surrender speech, her words providing perfect cover for the most audacious military infiltration in galactic history. The Hegemony personnel in the amphitheater remained focused on the diplomatic proceedings, never suspecting that their entire military command structure was being systematically compromised. We recognize that human technology cannot compete with the advanced capabilities of the Hegemony Alliance, the ambassador continued, each phrase containing embedded signals that coordinated the final movements of all 4 Special Forces teams. Elena smiled as she received confirmation that every objective had been achieved. Ghost Team had complete control of the station's power and life support systems. Alpha Team had secured the primary command center and neutralized its automated defenses. Reaper Team controlled internal security and surveillance throughout the facility. Shadow Team had isolated Nexus 7 from the Hegemony fleet and established the capability to manipulate all external communications. Station Nexus 7, the most secure military facility in Hegemony space, was now under complete human control. The Hegemony Alliance didn't know it yet, but their invasion force had just been rendered leaderless, blind, and incapable of coordinated action, and the ceremony to accept humanity's surrender was still in progress. Therefore, Ambassador Mitchell announced, her voice carrying a subtle change in tone that made Admiral Kexthorn lean forward with sudden attention. I must inform you that the terms of surrender you have proposed are unacceptable to the human species. The Admiral's 4 eyes widened in shock. This was not part of the script. Humans were supposed to capitulate completely, accepting whatever terms the Hegemony chose to impose. Furthermore, the ambassador continued, I must inform you that this station is now under human control, and your invasion fleet has been rendered operationally ineffective. The amphitheater erupted in confused shouting as Hegemony personnel struggled to understand what they were hearing. Admiral Kexthorn reached for his communication device to contact the command center, only to discover that his access codes no longer worked. Throughout Station Nexus 7, alien military personnel began to realize that their most secure facility had been compromised by an enemy they had completely underestimated. The humans hadn't just infiltrated their station, they had taken complete control of it while the surrender ceremony was in progress. Elena's voice echoed through the station's communication system as she addressed the shocked hegemony personnel. "This is Commander Elena Vasquez of Human Special Forces. Station Nexus 7 is now under our operational control. All hegemony personnel will remain at their posts and await further instructions." Admiral Kexthorne stared at Ambassador Mitchell in stunned disbelief. "This is impossible. Your species lacks the capability to achieve what you claim." The ambassador smiled with quiet confidence. "Admiral, you're about to learn why alien soldiers throughout the galaxy have begun to tremble at the name of Human Special Forces. The transformation of Station Nexus 7 from hegemony command center to human-controlled facility happened with a precision that left alien personnel stunned into silence. Within minutes of Ambassador Mitchell's announcement, every critical system aboard the massive station responded to human commands while the original crew found themselves locked out of their own equipment. Admiral Kexthorne stood in the amphitheater, his four eyes darting between his useless communication device and the human ambassador, who had just announced the impossible. Around him, hegemony officers from 4 different species tried frantically to contact their respective command structures, only to discover that every communication channel was now under human control. Elena emerged from the maintenance access tunnel beneath the command center, her ghost team flanking her as she approached the primary control console. The Vraxian technicians manning the station stepped back in confused terror, as this human female, who had supposedly been working as a diplomatic communications specialist, began operating their most secure systems with an expertise that defied comprehension. "Status report," Elena commanded into her communicator, her voice now carrying the authority of someone who controlled the most powerful military facility in hegemony space. "Alpha Team has secured all command centers," reported Captain Rodriguez. "Enemy command staff are alive and unharmed, but completely cut off from their forces. Reaper Team controls all security systems and internal communications," added Major Santos.
"Station personnel are secure and accounted."
4. Shadow Team has established complete electronic warfare dominance, confirmed Major Chen. The hegemony fleet believes they're still receiving routine status reports from Nexus 7, Elena nodded with satisfaction as she surveyed the main command center. Dozens of alien officers watched in stunned silence as 4 teams of Human Special Forces personnel took control of systems that represented the technological pinnacle of 4 advanced civilizations. "How?" Admiral Kexthorne demanded, his voice cracking with disbelief. "How did primitive humans penetrate the most secure facility in the galaxy?" Elena turned to face the Admiral, her expression calm and professional. "With respect, Admiral, your assumptions about human capabilities have been your greatest weakness. You designed your security systems to defend against alien threats, but you never considered that humans might approach the problem differently." She gestured toward the holographic displays that now showed Human Special Forces personnel positioned throughout the station. "You assumed that infiltration required advanced technology, overwhelming force, or superior firepower. You never imagined that it might require something much simpler, the ability to think like your enemies." Ambassador Mitchell stepped forward, her diplomatic credentials now revealed as cover for one of the most complex military operations in galactic history. "For months, we studied everything about hegemony military doctrine, technology, and psychology. We learned how you think, how you plan, and how you build your defenses." Captain Rodriguez joined the group, his Alpha Team maintaining security positions throughout the command center. "Then we did something that no alien military force has ever attempted. We learned to think differently. Not better, not more advanced, just different." The truth was finally dawning on the assembled hegemony personnel. Human Special Forces hadn't overcome their defenses through superior technology or overwhelming firepower. They had achieved the impossible by exploiting assumptions and blind spots that the aliens didn't even know they possessed. Major Santos materialized from the security center, his Reaper team having completed their takeover of the station's defensive systems. "Your species are individually brilliant," he explained to the speechless aliens. "But you all think in similar patterns, follow similar doctrines, and make similar assumptions about warfare and strategy." Major Chen emerged from the communications center, his shadow team having established complete control over information flow to and from the station. "Humans evolved differently. We developed the ability to adapt, to think creatively under pressure, and to find solutions that violate conventional logic. Elena activated the main holographic display, showing the tactical situation throughout hegemony space. The massive invasion fleet that had been assembled to crush humanity was now effectively leaderless, with individual ship commanders uncertain about their orders and unable to coordinate their actions. "Your fleet still has overwhelming numerical superiority," she acknowledged, "but without centralized command and control, they're just individual ships scattered across multiple sectors. They don't know what we've done here. They can't communicate effectively with each other, and they have no idea how to respond to a situation their military doctrine never anticipated." Admiral Kexthorne slumped in his command chair, the full implications of the human achievement finally becoming clear. "You've turned our greatest advantage into our greatest weakness." "Exactly," Ambassador Mitchell confirmed. "The Hegemony Alliance depends on coordination between 4 different species, 4 different technologies, and 4 different military traditions. Without Nexus 7 to provide unified command, your alliance becomes 4 separate forces with conflicting objectives and incompatible communication protocols." Elena manipulated the holographic controls, displaying real-time intelligence gathered from across hegemony space. "Observe the current situation. Vraxian commanders are following their traditional doctrine of aggressive advance, but they're not receiving confirmation from Caltharian support units. Theronian fleet elements are maintaining defensive formations while waiting for orders that will never come. Zeridian reconnaissance forces are reporting conflicting information that can't be verified through normal channels." The display showed exactly what human strategists had predicted. The hegemony invasion force was fragmenting into its component species, each following their own military instincts without the central coordination that had made their alliance effective. "This is psychological warfare on a scale that has never been attempted," Admiral Kexthorne realized. "You haven't just captured our command center. You've demonstrated that human capabilities extend far beyond what any of us believed possible." Elena nodded gravely. "Every alien military commander in the galaxy will receive reports of what happened here today. They'll learn that a small team of humans penetrated the most secure facility in known space, neutralized the most powerful military alliance in galactic history, and did it all without firing a shot in anger. The psychological impact would indeed be devastating. For centuries, alien species had assumed that military superiority depended on technological advancement, numerical strength, and firepower. The idea that a supposedly primitive species could achieve total tactical victory through creativity, adaptability, and unconventional thinking would force every alien military to reconsider their fundamental assumptions about warfare. "What happens now?" asked Commander Yithral, the station's former security chief. Ambassador Mitchell smiled with diplomatic precision. "Now we negotiate." The Hegemony Alliance was formed to crush human expansion through overwhelming force, but circumstances have changed. Your invasion fleet is scattered and demoralized. Your command structure has been compromised, and your military leadership has been forced to acknowledge that humans represent a threat they don't understand. Elena accessed the communication systems, establishing contact with Earth Command. "This is Ghost Leader reporting successful completion of Operation Phantom Protocol. Nexus 7 is secure, enemy command capabilities are neutralized, and the Hegemony invasion force is effectively neutralized." The response from Earth was immediate and jubilant, but Elena felt only the quiet satisfaction of a mission accomplished. This operation would become the template for human special forces doctrine throughout the galaxy. Achieve the impossible through unconventional thinking, exploit enemy assumptions rather than trying to overcome enemy strengths, and demonstrate capabilities that force opponents to reconsider the nature of conflict itself. Admiral Kexthorne studied the humans who had so completely outmaneuvered his forces. "Your species fights unlike anything we've encountered. You treat warfare as an intellectual challenge rather than a test of strength." "We treat it as a problem to be solved," Elena corrected. "Every enemy has weaknesses, every defense has vulnerabilities, and every assumption can be exploited. Human special forces exist to find solutions that other species consider impossible." As the hours passed, reports flooded in from across Hegemony space confirming the complete success of the operation. Individual fleet commanders, unable to coordinate with central command and uncertain about their objectives, began withdrawing to defensive positions. The massive invasion force that was supposed to eliminate humanity as a galactic threat had been neutralized by 4 teams of human special forces operating from within the enemy's most secure facility. The surrender ceremony had become something entirely different, a demonstration of human military capabilities that would resonate throughout the galaxy for generations to come. Alien species that had never heard of Earth would learn about the day that human special forces captured Station Nexus 7, and military academies across dozens of civilizations would study the operation as an example of warfare taken to its logical extreme. Elena stood before the main holographic display, watching as the political situation across hegemony space began to shift in humanity's favor. The alliance that had seemed so threatening just days earlier was fragmenting under the weight of its own coordination problems. While human diplomatic initiatives gained credibility backed by the demonstrated capabilities of human special forces, Ambassador Mitchell began the complex negotiations that would reshape the balance of power in this sector of the galaxy. But the real victory had already been achieved. Human special forces had proven that they could accomplish objectives that alien military doctrine considered impossible, and that reputation would serve humanity's interests far better than any conventional military victory. From this day forward, when alien soldiers heard the name of human special forces, they would remember Station Nexus 7. They would remember that humans didn't fight like other species, didn't think like other species, and didn't accept the limitations that other species considered absolute. They would remember, and they would tremble.